David Perry was born on August 8, 1741, in the town of Rehoboth, Massachusetts, the oldest son of Eliakim and Sarah Perry. He was born at the same time as our nation, and the French, with their Indian allies, were fighting England and Spain for control of America. One of his uncles, Abner Perry, was killed during a skirmish with the French and Indians when David was 5 years old. When he was 7, David lost his mother, leaving his father alone with 4 young children: David 7, Sylvanus 5, Abigail 3, and Elizabeth 1. Unable to take care of the children, his father sent David and the 2 girls to live with their uncle, David Joy. Since we are only told about the 3 children who were sent to live with their uncle, we must assume Sylvanus stayed with his father. When David was 15, he was apprenticed to learn the trade of tanner and shoemaker. A year later, in 1758, at the age of 16, David entered the French and Indian War. His first mission was to take Ticonderoga from the French. This was the first time he had ever seen military action, and was surprised that one had to stand still to be shot at. As I was putting this together, I found a PBS documentary called The War That Made America. In part 3, I was pleased and surprised when I heard them quoting right out of this book. You'll even hear one of the soldiers call him David. How cool is that?
The ground was strewed with the dead and dying. A man could not stand erect without being hit, for the bulls came by the handful. And I could hear the men screaming and see them dying all around me.
When the French and Indian War was over, he went with General Wolfe to free Quebec from the French. The next year, he was sent to Nova Scotia to protect the settlers from the French and Indians who were still causing trouble. 1761 was the first time in 3 years David was able to stay home and work without fighting. 1762 was a very busy and interesting year for him. He was sent to Halifax, Nova Scotia to help build a fort on Citadel Hill. There was no enemy action there, but one thing made a rather large impression on him. In his own words, "There is one thing I would here notice, which shows a specimen of British cruelty without a parallel, I could hope, in the history of that nation. 3 men, for some trifling offense which I do not recollect, were tied up to be whipped. One of them was to receive 800 lashes, the others 500 apiece. By the time they had received 300 lashes, the flesh appeared to be entirely whipped from their shoulders, and they hung as mute and motionless as though they had been long since deprived of life. But this was not enough. The doctor stood by them with a vial of sharp stuff, which he would ever and anon apply to their noses, and finding, by the pain it gave them, that some signs of life remained, he would tell them, 'Damn you, you can bear it yet!' And then the whipping would commence again. It was the most cruel punishment I ever saw inflicted, or had ever conceived of before, by far worse than death." Later that same year, he was sent to Havana to recapture it from the Spanish. In the summer of 1762, he was sent to Newfoundland, as the French had captured the city and distressed the inhabitants very much. Upon reaching the fort, the French fired on them with their cannon. Here his curiosity got the better of him. He says, "I had heard it remarked that a ball could be seen in the air after it left the cannon's mouth, and thought this was a good time to ascertain the truth of what appeared so incredible to me. I stood my ground. The piece was fired, and before the ball got halfway to me, I could see where it was by driving the air together and forming a blue kind of substance about the size of a barrel." Curiosity didn't kill this cat, but it could have. On his way home from this campaign, he became very ill, having contracted nervous fever, which is thought to be typhoid fever. In this state, a peculiar thing happened to him. He said, "While I was on board that vessel, it appears to me that I died, and that I was immediately conveyed to the gate of heaven. As he was about to enter, he was told that it wasn't his time, and that if he behaved as he should, he would enter when it was his time. He also saw a continual flowing of people, as you would expect, especially in the war. They didn't stop, but went either to the left or to the right, the left being the opening of a great gulf. The greater part of the grown people seemed to pass off there. Once in a while one passed through the gate into the holy city. One person appeared with whom he had been intimately acquainted. It was Doc Matthews, the ship's doctor, who, he found out later, had died on the ship while he was sick on board. The one that talked with him previously told him about the Revolutionary War and showed him the British vessels in the harbor of Boston as plainly as he saw them when they came. In 1763, at the age of 23, he moved from his home in Rehoboth, Massachusetts, to Killingly, Connecticut, and on January 12, 1764, David married Anna Bliss. He worked as a tanner and a shoemaker and became very prosperous. In the course of 3 or 4 years, he gained considerable property. By 1775, at the beginning of the Revolutionary War, David and Anna had 5 children: Sarah, Sylvanus, Anna, David, and Lucy. Ever the patriot and soldier, he re-enlisted. His first assignment was Bunker Hill. While he didn't participate in that fight, he was sent to Prospect Hill, which is almost about a mile away, to help build a fort. In 1776, he was promoted to first lieutenant. He continued fighting until March of 1779, when he moved from Connecticut to Plainfield, New Hampshire. He lived there 18 years. He now had 7 children, Marcy being born in 1776, and Hannah being born in 1779. His final child, Nathaniel Greene, was born in 1782, for a total of 8 children. From 1779, when he moved there, until the end of the war in 1783, there was very little fighting where he lived. He could finally raise his family in peace. In 1785, he took a captain's commission in the New Hampshire militia and served 8 years. He also served 9 years as selectman, which is like a city councilman. When he moved from Plainfield, New Hampshire to Chelsea, Vermont in 1797, Vermont wasn't yet a state. There was a dispute between New York and Vermont over the state boundaries. It was finally negotiated that if Vermont would pay New York $30,000, New York would relinquish all rights to the land and Vermont could become a state. David Perry helped pay that premium. So, it might be argued, probably not too successfully though, that we own a small part of Vermont. In 1819, he published his memoir, Recollections of an Old Soldier, The Life of Captain David Perry, Soldier of the French Revolutionary Wars. I have a copy of the book, or you can get it online. It is a must-read. His final words for the country and his descendants are these: I pray God that this bond of union may continue to grow firmer and stronger, till every American citizen be of one heart and one mind, in a determination to support our Republican form of government to the latest posterity. May we all remember the maxim of our illustrious Washington: united we stand, divided we fall. But above all, let us as a nation dedicate ourselves to God, and pray that He would have us in His holy keeping, and so direct the councils of our nation as may tend to preserve its free institutions to the latest period of time. David Perry died May 2, 1826 at Ira, Vermont, having fought in and surviving 4 wars. He died at the home of his youngest son, Nathaniel Greene Perry, with whom he and Anna had been residing. He is buried in Riverside Cemetery in Ira, not far from his 3rd great-granddaughter's home. His grave has 2 markers, one placed there by his family, and one by the state of Connecticut in recognition of his patriotic service to his country during the Revolutionary War.